Hello and welcome to Here's to Your Health. I'm your host, VeggiePatti, and it's my pleasure to bring you information on healthy living. On today's episode, we are doing the second episode of Healing Journeys. Again, the Healing Journeys segment is a segment that we invite members of the public to come and share their stories about their lives and any of the conditions or symptoms that they may be facing to help encourage other viewers to figure out how to best manage your own medical conditions. So on today's episode, we have guests Shannon Mesic and TC Glotfelty. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And I don't want to take up a bunch of time with me talking, so I want to get right to their stories. So we're going to start with Shannon. So Shannon, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and your story and why you wanted to come on the show?
Okay. Well, I have chronic kidney disease, and it started as early as 3. I was swelling really bad, and my mom took me to the doctor. They thought I was having some sort of allergic reaction. In fact, one of my first memories was a spinal tap that I received from that. They found out that I had nephrotic syndrome, which is a condition where your kidneys leak protein. So that put me in the hospital for about 8 or 9 months when I was 3 years old. So I spent much of that time in a cage crib type thing at Detroit Children's Hospital. That lasted until I was about 12. I was in and out of the hospital the first 3 years of that. Was probably more in than out. And as I got older, second grade, 7 years older, it started getting better and better. And eventually they'd take me off of prednisones, and I was kind of not getting all the treatments that I was before, and they said that it went dormant. So around 12 years old, I ended up going back to like a regular childhood, which was very nice. Those 9 years were pretty rough, especially through school, but I made it through. So from 12 to 19, everything was fine and dandy. And when I was 19, I was hanging out with some friends and wasn't doing anything like exertion. I wasn't exerting myself. I was just sitting there calmly, and I got really, really dizzy, and I fainted. And my friends kind of panicked and took me to the hospital. We found out I had like extremely high blood pressure. It was probably 200 something over like 160, 170 something. And I started having to take blood pressure medication. Well, being 19, you're invincible. So I was very bad at taking my medication. This lasted for almost a decade, 8 years that I was very bad about taking my medication. When I was 27, I ended up passing out again, just sitting there doing nothing. And over a course of 2 weeks, I passed out 2 more times, and I ended up going to the doctors, and he diagnosed me at 27 with chronic kidney disease. Stage 3, we can get to the stages later, but I was diagnosed stage 3. I was very lucky. Most people are diagnosed towards the end of stage 4. Stage 5 is renal failure. So I was a little bit lucky on that. So since I've been 27, 10 years, 11 years, 11 years, I've had to completely modify my lifestyle, primarily with food, is the biggest thing. There's no medicines that we can take. Dialysis, transplant is really our only options. And other than that, it's a matter of trying to eat right. In essence, I'm doing the filtering for my kidneys. I can only intake what my body needs and will use. Anything left over, my kidneys don't get rid of. So it ends up kind of making waste in my blood. And that can cause a lot more problems. So maintaining diet is 100% essential in prolonging my inevitable dialysis, potentially transplant.
Okay. Now let's talk briefly about the stages so people understand.
Okay.
What are the different stages?
Well, you're talking the stages of your GFR, which is your kidneys filtration rate. And the top number, stage 1, you're good to go. Nothing's wrong with you, is 90. As you work your way down, you get into, I believe, 60s. 60s and the 40s are stage 2. You've got your 30s, roughly, which is stage 3. When you get to 29, I believe, GFR, you end up being in stage 4, which is where things start getting pretty serious. Typically, it's around the number 15 where you have to start dialysis, sometimes a little sooner. And stage 5 is failure. Your kidneys are no longer functioning. The only way you're functioning is through dialysis or transplant.
Okay. And then how, so when you were diagnosed, you said it was like the stage 3 that you were diagnosed. Like, besides the fainting, what are some other symptoms that you have, like that people might, if people have these symptoms, how would they know to go to their doctor and request a blood test, and what type of blood test should they be requesting?
Unfortunately, with kidney disease, the symptoms are easily ignored.
Okay.
Fatigue, just not feeling up to it. Dizziness for me, and I think it had to couple with my high blood pressure, so that might have been something more just for me than it is typical. Retaining water is another one. If you're eating a high sodium diet and your kidneys aren't working, you'll retain water. So puffy eyes, swollen ankles, legs primarily will get the brunt of the water retention. But I've actually talked to a lot of people. I'm in a group on Facebook for kidney disease, and love these people like family now. But there were a list of symptoms that everybody was different. And in the beginning, a lot of people ignored them because they're just, I'm tired. You know, I'm retaining a little bit of water. There's really not any serious symptoms until you're almost at renal failure. So like I said before, I was very lucky to find out in stage 3. Most people are 4 or later when they actually figure out, you know, something's not right.
Right. Okay.
The blood test you asked. Blood test is a simple blood test. They just check your filtration. Your GFR is what they're going to pull, and that'll tell them exactly how well your kidneys are filtering. It's a very, very simple test. If anybody has diabetes, high blood pressure, or even a history of kidney disease in their family, getting checked at least semi-regularly should definitely be a priority.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for sharing that, and I'm going to come back and ask you some more questions about what you've done about that. But one of the things that really stands out for me is when you talk about the symptoms, that the symptoms can be this wide variety and it's different for everybody, and that kind of leads me into your story, because one of the things you said was fatigue, and I know part of your journey was also with fatigue. So, TC, why don't you tell us a little bit about your story?
I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome. This was back in 2009, after I had come on with some random symptoms. I thought that they were completely unrelated. First thing that I noticed was I was having hypoglycemia attacks. I'd just be at work. I had just started a job that I loved, and 10 o'clock in the morning every day, I would almost hit the floor. So I figured, okay, well, I used to have gestational diabetes, you know, each time I was pregnant. So I said, okay, well, maybe this is just, they said I was going to have to look out for this later in life. Maybe it's just coming on early. And it didn't stop there. Then it was pain in my joints. Very mild at first, and then all of a sudden completely debilitating. My knees were especially hit hard, and I couldn't walk on my own. First, with the help of crutches, I was getting around, and then I had to use a wheelchair. And then my hands and my feet got really bad, so then I couldn't even push myself in the wheelchair. My husband had to do it. Then it wasn't just my joints anymore, it was all over my entire body. First started out as kind of a dull pain, and then on top of that, sharp stabbing pains all over, and if someone even just tried to lightly touch me, it felt like I was getting punched. And I basically had to stay away from everyone, and being a mom of young children, that was especially hard, because all you want to do is hold them and hug them, and you have to tell them, you know, you have to say back, you know, you touching mommy is going to hurt her. That was probably one of the hardest things I had of going through all of this. Then after that, I couldn't even be in a wheelchair. I was bedridden. I'm one of those people that I don't like to take different kind of medications, and they had me on, it seems like everyone under the sun, and most of them line up with antidepressants. And it can throw everything out of balance and make it worse. Especially when you're at that point where you are disabled, essentially, and not being able to get out of bed, you already have an issue with depression. I lost any kind of sense of what my life was. I had to try to come to terms with this new life where I could essentially do nothing, and instead of taking care of my family, they had to take care of me. So I kind of felt useless, you know, as a mom and a wife, and had no idea where to go. To get my diagnosis, I didn't even want to believe it at first, because there's kind of this stigma with fibromyalgia that, oh, it's in your head, or fibromyalgia doesn't really exist. It's just a category that they put you into when they can't figure out what is really wrong. So thankfully, my general practitioner was an amazing woman. She kind of had a feeling right off the bat what it was, but in order to placate my fears, she ran the gamut of tests, and we went through multiple blood draws and you know, ANA testing for MS, for lupus. They did bone scans. Everything came back okay. So after seeing 2 more rheumatologists, she said, okay, I think we're at the end of it here. I'm going to go with my gut and say it has to be fibromyalgia. And she said the chronic fatigue goes right along with it. It's pretty self-explanatory. I could not walk on my own. If I tried to get up from the couch and go use the restroom on my own, I would be doubled over, unable to breathe. My husband would have to come get me and help me walk that far, and it's a distance of maybe 20 feet. So, yeah, it was an end to the life that I knew, and I had to try and figure out a way to start over. Thankfully, I've been able to get a little bit of help, and it hasn't been through the tons of medication.
Okay, well, why don't you, I thank you, for sharing the story, and I think people know what you're saying about fibromyalgia. A lot of people, they hear that, they don't understand what it is. They hear it, even you yourself said, I didn't believe it at first. I kept pushing to try to get something else, and everything else came back fine. And the symptoms can vary so widely for people. It's just like with the kidney disease, the symptoms vary so widely, it's sometimes difficult to pinpoint, what is this? So why don't you tell us a little bit about how did you start to feel better and get better? What got you, obviously you're able to walk, and you're sitting here and talking to us today, which I'm glad about, but how did you get to this point?
Well, I actually came upon it by complete accident. I had gone through all of the different fibro medications and nothing helped, and I was not about to stay on pain medication for the rest of my life. But I did it when I had to, and nothing beyond that. I ended up going veg a little over 5 years ago for conservation and ethical reasons, and had this wonderful side effect when I went vegan. My pain subsided by at least 80%. Completely unexpected. The issues that I had with the muscle spasms and the vertigo, the complete imbalance, the IBS issues, completely gone. And that was a fairly quick turnaround. The pain subsided over probably maybe 5 or 6 months, but I can walk unassisted. Not only can I walk, I'm able to run now. Before I was diagnosed, before I fell ill, I was training for my very first 5K. I thought for years, I'm going to do this, I want to do this, to prove it to myself. And when I got sick, I kind of lost all hope of ever being able to do that. Well, I'm back into running for a little over a year now. I ran that 5K, I ran a 10K, and I'm currently training for my first half marathon next month.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm glad that, and for you, it's like this diet, which you did it for a different reason, but changing your diet in a way that your body said, oh, I like what you're putting in me now, and I like what you're not putting in me, that had a total turnaround for you to get you to be functional again.
Absolutely.
And so when I know Shannon, diet had a big effect for you too. Yes. I want you to talk about that, but yours is a little bit different because obviously we don't want people to eat processed food. Processed food for anybody is not good, and there's a lot of categories of foods that just are not good for anybody. But you're kind of the opposite, where if you tried to eat her diet, you would
Oh,
get sicker,
yeah, I
and if
couldn't
she
do
tried
that.
to eat your diet, she would get a lot sicker because of the way your
Yes.
body works. So talk a little bit about the kidney diet.
I do want to say, first off, that a renal diet is not a diet for anybody to use unless you have to.
Okay.
It is not healthy for other people. The gist of the diet is, like I said before, you are filtering for your kidney. So you cannot take in more than what your body is actually going to use up that day. So the first thing that you do is you start with labs. You get your labs, you find out where things are at for you personally. But the key things we watch are sodium, protein, potassium, and phosphorus. Lucky for us, we have protein and sodium and occasionally potassium all over labels. But we don't have phosphorus. So I'm going to talk real quick about that.
Okay.
Phosphorus is in everything. There's not a food out there that doesn't have it. Where it's huge is meats, nuts, dairy products, and almost every single processed food out there because they use phosphorus for preservatives. You know, you see phosphorus or phosphate, and you know all the different ways to say if it starts with PHOS.
Okay.
And unfortunately, this isn't on any labels. This is the one thing that we can put in our bodies that dialysis cannot remove. It can cause bone disease because what ends up happening when our body isn't flushing out, my kidneys aren't flushing out the leftover phosphorus, is it could start developing deposits, calcium deposits on our bones and actually cause bone disease. So it's unfortunate that we can't find it. So what I did is I took it upon myself to quickly go through and find as many foods as I can, called companies, used the USDA website, found out how many milligrams of phosphorus was in all these kinds of foods so I could track it. I can only have 1,000 milligrams. A typical American diet will consume 5,000 to 6,000 if you eat healthy. So, but watching all of those things, and it's a matter of how many milligrams can I have is based on my labs. Some people can have more potassium than I can. Some people have to have less. Same thing, sodium is a big one for me. When I actually started watching that, my blood pressure dropped. I went from 40 milligrams of medicine to 10 milligrams as needed. So I check my blood pressure regularly, and if I need it, I take the pill. If I don't, I don't. Diet highly affects my blood pressure, or sodium does. Potassium, that's a good balance. Too little or too much of either sodium or potassium can actually cause some neurological problems. So a lot of times I know you start to learn, oh, I need more sodium, oh, I had too much sodium. Because when you have too little, your neurons actually misfire because it operates on a potassium sodium pump. And I went through and I thought I knew exactly what my diet was because I had it when I was a lot younger, when I was first diagnosed. Totally different when you're an adult. I went out, I started eating like 500 milligrams of sodium a day, 500 milligrams of potassium, which is all your fruits and veggies. I started seeing spots, lost depth perception, was slurred. You would have thought I was drunk. And I went to my doctor, it was a week. I had been doing this, went to my doctor, and he asked me what I'd been eating, and I told him, and he says, you need salt, and you need salt now, because I had cut back so much. So any kind of low sodium diet or low potassium should definitely be monitored by a doctor, because your body, it's like your essential fuel to keep you going. But overall, some people get shocked at the fact that I can't eat a lot of fruits and veggies. 1,800 milligrams is what I can have. To put that in a perspective, that's a potato and a banana a day. Those are your high things. So I do actually try to avoid those. I could have a potato or I could have 3 cups of grapes. So, you know, it's a balancing act with kidney disease. It's a numbers act. I can have this much. I can have 1,800 milligrams of potassium. How am I going to consume that today? Choices I've made is I've cut back to distilled water. Tap water, all other kind of bottles water, they have sodium. They've actually got ingredients on water. Potassium, fluoride's not good for me. Aluminum, which you can find in water sometimes. Your deodorant, I can't have it. You got to use special deodorant. But yeah, there's a lot of things in there that, you know, you just got to cut back on. And it's a matter of, you know, how am I going to consume it today?
Right.
So eating healthy, I definitely get to eat more food.
Right.
So.
And you were telling me previously, tell about the numbers, that when you started the diet, how did your numbers change?
Oh my goodness. Okay. When I was diagnosed at 27, I kind of hit the ground running. Started just watching my sodium, potassium, and I just did this off of labels. Phosphorus, I just looked at what was high and what was low. I didn't necessarily know the amounts. And I managed that for 6 years. Did pretty well, maintained. My GFR, my filtration rate didn't change, so I was hanging out in the mid-30s. I was very content, still very content in my mid-30s. But then I started slipping, and I went and got my labs done, and nothing changed. And I'm like, well, I don't have to be this serious about my diet anymore. I can cheat once in a while and eat this and go, eat Wendy's, or you know what I mean. I started eating fast food and eating out. Started buying cheaper food because, and for about a year I maintained. I stayed in my 30s. I was going, 36 to 34 to 32, but it didn't scare me. The last year I pretty much went completely off my diet. I ate an unhealthy diet all the way around, and I ended up going for a lab, and my GFR dropped to 22, which put me at stage 4. And my doctor brought up the word dialysis and go see a specialist, and it got me really scared. I went home, started doing a lot of research, and recommitted myself. I even found out more. I got on a group on Facebook, and they were telling me things that my doctors never, ever brought up to me, and I felt cheated, actually, in a sense. I'm like, why weren't you telling me that I shouldn't ever eat red meat? Not that I just should only eat a little, but I should never touch red meat. And there was a lot of things just like that. And these people, these awesome people from all over the world helped me. And I had just 100% renal diet. Every single thing that went in my mouth was calculated. I kept track on spreadsheets of what was in everything, how much I ate that day, where I could balance things out. And I ended up going from 22 GFR to 36 GFR in 4 months. So I brought myself those 2 years of damage back up.
Right.
And I'm still there.
Right. So I know we're getting close to the end of our show, and there's so much more information. I know we could keep talking, but one thing I want to ask both of you is, now both of you, obviously, you have these diets that you are pretty strict, that you stick to. I'm sure some of the questions that the viewers have is, wow, that seems like a lot of work. So can you talk about why it's more important how much work is it actually once you start doing it, and why is it more important to you to put in that work than the alternative?
For me first?
Yeah, go ahead.
In the beginning, it was extremely difficult and extremely diligent because looking up the phosphorus, like I had mentioned, I have a spreadsheet of categories of foods, fruits and vegetables, milks and creamers. I had probably put 20 to 30 hours a week in about 6 months just learning what was in my food. I did a lot of research, and I'm not talking WebMD. I mean actual looking up scientific studies, comparing them with other studies, finding out that hormones are huge, that they put in the animals and stuff and meats, huge link to kidney disease. I was finding out things, like I said, that my doctors never told me. I actually left my doctor after I started doing this because I realized I knew more than him. Found a great doctor, though, and now she knows more than me, so I'm happy. But it's, when it's your life, I don't know, it kind of made it a little easier. When I saw this food, I thought I could be on dialysis and go ahead and eat the steak. Or I could go ahead and have my salad with my rice and maintain a lifestyle without dialysis, which is 20 to 30 hours a week of your life plugged to a machine that is actually very dangerous. More people die on dialysis than actually through kidney failure because dialysis can give you a heart attack. So when it comes down to it, the first 6 months were hard. They were really hard. You had to be really diligent. But after that, that's how life is now. You know, I can look at things. I don't have to do my charts as often anymore because now I'm starting to know things by heart. My friends are awesome. When they see me eating bad, they start screaming dialysis at me. Kind of remind me to be good. I can't say that I'm perfect all the time. But for the most part, I have maintained stage 3 for 10 years simply through diet. Great. And I could do another 30.
Great. And I think, to that point that you had said is, if you're on dialysis, you're going to be on it 10 to 20 hours a week. So you're going to pay here or you're going to pay here.
Exactly, one way or the other. Yes.
So now for you, how is it to manage your diet, and how did you come to that decision instead of the alternative? How does that affect you?
I think that I was very fortunate in the fact that I came across this completely by accident, something that I was already passionate about to begin with. Ended up helping my body and kind of, saving my life, if you will, because I essentially didn't have one before. You hear all the time people say, "You're a vegan? Oh my goodness, I could never do that." you could, especially just like Shannon said, when it comes to your life, it's a whole different story, knowing now that if I were to go back to eating the way that I had before, I couldn't do it. There's no way, because my body is functioning properly now. And if I were to even go back to the way that I was eating vegetarian, my body still wouldn't work the same, and I fear that the chronic fatigue would come back. You know, it's still there. I still have pain every day. Some days are bad, some days are really bad, but for the most part, I'm up and I'm able to move around. I'm not trading that for the world. I'm able to play with my kids and be the kind of mom that I want to be, so I'm not giving that up.
That's great. So we have time, just real quickly, what is one tip that you would give to viewers, one thing that you want people to know?
70% of people with chronic kidney disease have diabetes or high blood pressure. And if you have these, get checked on a regular basis. Kidney function after 30 starts going down 1% anyway, just for typical people. It's easy. Get a blood test. It's that simple. They'll let you know exactly how your kidneys are doing. It is definitely avoidable through diet. I know red meat is a big conspirator. Meats in general are pretty rough on us. But yeah, just get a blood test. It's super simple. They can tell right away.
Okay, great. And what's your one tip?
With everything that I've gone through, I would have to definitely say be your own advocate. It is real simple for people to listen to whatever it is that they hear and say, oh, well, maybe I should try this medication, or they just came out with a new one, try that. Well, listen to your body, and like Shannon suggested, get on social media. Find people that are going through what you are going through. They have a lot of great tips, and may not work for everyone, but may work for you. But being your own advocate, you will find ways to help your body and greatly benefit your life.
Great. Well, I want to thank you guys both so much for being on the show and for sharing your stories and for being brave to do that. And if any of you out there watching or seeing this and you want to share your story, please contact me on my website, VeggiePatti.com. Remember that no matter the cards you were dealt or your current state of health, you have the power to take charge of your health. So never give up and never stop learning. The solution you seek may be just around the corner. If you can join me in toast. And I checked, this is something Shannon can have.
I didn't eat fruit today.
So it's our cucumber juice. So we wish you a wonderful today and an even better tomorrow. Here's to your health.
Thanks.